Open source software. Basically, it's software that's being released under a license that allows the user to edit, to study, to change, and to redistribute the software after it's released. Now, the cool thing about open source software isn't only that they let you change it or that they let you redistribute it. The really exciting thing about it is that the knowledge that was developed while the software was made, that now becomes public information. Whenever a good open source project is being released, it creates a new starting point for every other developer, because the knowledge that was generated in that project now is visible to everyone. That can push an entire industry forward. That's why I always keep an eye open for these types of projects. And I have found something interesting. It's called openDAW. It's a digital audio workstation that's going to be open source and web browser based. And that is made by one person. Again. How dare this guy make me look less productive in comparison? I am outraged. So I called him. Hello, Andre. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Daniel, for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So, take us through it. What is openDAW?
Well, it's a big question, right? So basically, it's a free music production studio in the internet. It's going to be open source. It's going to be something where we want to go into schools, universities, so basically in the educational sector. But at the same time, I envision a community, a big, huge, more entertaining community at the same time, where we can where people are sharing their music and listen to music and embrace music.
Having a DAW that's fully operatable online, we've seen some attempts at making that, and I know you have experience in kind of the complexity of such a project. What made you go for that? What made you go for a project like openDAW that prioritizes the accessibility and the openness of an open source project?
I think the idea still dates back to the mid-90s, where there was basically no commercially available internet, and I wanted to make music all my life, but making music back then was kind of an expensive hobby. So you needed to buy real hardware, and synthesizers and drum computers and mixers were kind of expensive. So I had the feeling that if I ever go famous and rich, I would actually found studios in major cities and invite people basically like me who couldn't afford it to make music. That was like some night where I had this idea, and that was kind of implanted in my head. So years passed, and then I was actually confronted with someone who could program. I was 28 back then, and he taught me a couple of things, how to basically program. And so at this point, I was already doing some very simple music toys and always waited for the technology to advance and then see where, at which point we can actually do something that feels like making real music. I basically waited a long time for that, but I think in 2005 or 6, with the Flash Player 9 update, there was an opportunity, there was a feature that I could actually use for workaround to create an audio stream. So rather than playing an MP3 or some fixed audio file, I could actually compute numbers and send them to the sound card. And that was like the birth of everything that I since then do, like 20 years now. Yeah, and that still is like the thing that drives me. I started with a project that was called Audio. Unfortunately, it was never really funded. So it was really a problem to move forward without having a real team. At some point, even the vision were like we had different visions on how to proceed on the project, and it was first like it felt like a failure okay, maybe that's it. Maybe this idea that is there for so long doesn't really work. But at the same time, I had the feeling, no, I learned so much over the last 16 years. That's the time period that I actually worked for Auditool. And I figured, so maybe I should start from scratch and do it like the proper way. So at least the way I would do it. And that includes going open source. And this includes trying to get funding from different sources. So not like investors, more than maybe EU. So everything that comes in mind when you think about education funding, right? And we are onto it. I think this year is the year of truth. We will see if it works or not. But I have a very solid feeling inside of me saying, okay, let's just go for it. And I'm confident that this works. I see so much support, so many people talking to me that I find it hard to believe that it doesn't work this time.
Why go open source specifically? Like what is the intention behind that direction in particular?
So first of all, the most question I got over the last 3 weeks, over the last 3 weeks after the video that was dropped by Polarity, we got a lot of people coming in and asking questions on Discord and emails and everything. And most people were actually asking, why not now open source, right? So let me answer that first. It's I think going open source is, to me, it feels like I never have done that with such a big project. So everything I did in the past was always open source. I always put it in zip file at the time where there wasn't actually GitHub and all these things, and just gave it away on my server. Yeah, so I'm completely used to giving away stuff because I always think that comes back in form of other packages. So it's always a good idea to give away everything that you especially build on knowledge of other people, because there's actually nothing that you can do firsthand, right? So that brings to, so there's a lot of things you have to have in mind. So you're going open source, you need to find a good license, right? Because eventually we want to earn some money out of it, by inventing or creating business models that are not just premium models, not asking users for money. It should be different, and maybe we are talking about that later. Choosing a license is definitely something that is really difficult. And the second thing is, what's the point of going open source if you cannot really introduce pull requests? So when people are actually interested and start downloading the source code and doing some changes, and they want to bring that back to the project, we need some infrastructure to look over these things. And right now I don't have the time for that. I'm just doing 2 things right now. I'm juggling coding, which is always fun, and like talking to you, which is also fun. But I cannot even imagine taking now the third thing into account and trying to do a good job reading code from other people, which is always, if you're a developer, you know what I'm talking about. So that's the reason why not now. Probably by the end of the year, I would say, if everything goes according to the plan, there is no reason not to go open source. So it is baked in the DNA of openDAW, right? It's in the name. It's in the whole idea. I want people to be able to see in the code, make changes, but also take the code and do derivatives, right? They could create completely different applications and just cherry picking a few things that they think, oh yeah, that's good. I always wanted to know how to draw a waveform. I always wanted to know how to put like thousands of nodes in a certain data structure to pull out the things that I'm playing right now. So that have been done over and over and over in different companies. And I think it's there's nothing really new about that. So let's go and make it open to everybody, right? I'm not the first, or openDAW is not the first DAW which goes this approach, right? So I don't take credit for that. But on the other hand, it would, for me, not a good idea to make it all closed and trying to keep it all bundled up.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think at this point, we are maybe more than 30 years into the process of technology aggregating information about how to handle a DAW, and the fact that source of information is kind of still behind lock and key for a lot of people. I think that is definitely something that openDAW would be very attractive for people for that reason.
And it's also, when you think of our target group, which is schools and universities, I think they have a way better feeling working with us and giving us money if we go open source. If we wouldn't go open source, then they're always dependent on what we have in mind for the next year and the year after that, right? So we can always say, okay, now we want to have a lot of money for our services. And so they don't like to be dependent, of course, right? And they want to have a long-term relationship. They want to create their schedule, their school schedule, that they know we are taking openDAW to teach those things, and then they make material and everything. So it's a huge investment for schools and universities to pick a software and go for it. And I think they should actually always go for open source.
I agree that at the very least, it's something they should incorporate in addition to what they do, because organizational changes, they always take the bigger the organization is, it takes longer for them to do it safely so nothing collapses. But I would say that it is extremely valuable because it allows also the research departments and their teams of development within these institutions to develop something that is applicable to a DAW without needing to be limited to what a package of a plugin in a certain format has to adhere to. So it opens up a lot of options, which I'm very excited about. So when it comes to the monetization format, the idea is you're exploring is to have institutions pay for the license, the ongoing support, and offset that from the users. In particular, it's a model of like a patronship from the organizations that use the software.
Exactly, right. So there should always be a version which is completely free. And that is what I was talking about earlier, having a huge worldwide community of people making music, listen to music, talk about music, sharing devices, right? And presets, and yeah, just knowledge and information. So they should have fun, right? And then there are these closed groups, instances of the community for schools and universities, which are closed in a sense that they can decide what users actually can do and how they register and all these things, because we figured that it's a big issue for a lot of teachers. Services that are out there, online doors, they force you to provide an email and certain things, and in some countries that's simply not allowed, or they have different policies. So openDAW solves that immediately just by saying, okay, you take your instance, you install your own community on your school, and then you can set up and config all the things that you want to allow or even not allow. Sample upload is one thing where I see a lot of configuration requirements. And also the way how they deal with each other, right? It's definitely something where open source can help to bring this independence back to those who are actually working with that.
Let's explore it for a second, just because it gets the wheels turning. I'm thinking about storage, for example, because if you have an instance of the software project you're working on, let's say the DAW itself happens in a browser, but the files are stored locally. When you share that project, is there a plan to have the other files accessible, like with a local storage for the university, let's say, if the university takes it?
Yeah. So, first of all, we are focusing or prioritizing, so to say, an offline version. So that includes that you can use your own samples. And if you want to share this project, then there is already a feature called making a bundle out of it. So you export a bundle, which is basically a zip file containing all the information that is needed for the other side to be opened, and then having all the things in one place.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's definitely great. From there, you can imagine that we at some point have technologies or another project which would probably be called something along the lines like openDAW cloud or something. I don't know. In best case scenario, you can connect the cloud you like to connect, right? So there should be some API where the studio is actually asking for, is there some API I can talk to? And if yes, okay, then I can store samples and presets and whatnot. If not, I'm in my closed scenario like every other software DAW, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm so excited to hear that it's already within movement. Even the bundle feature alone is a huge boost for usability. So that's very exciting. The way you see it, let's say best case scenario, as far as you can go, unlimited by budgeting. What is your vision for where openDAW goes?
These are the questions that keep me awake every night. Oh yeah, that's great, and I love that. And it's the thing that drives you because you're always aiming at these stars, right? But first of all, what's super important is not to. So I see it as a marathon. So if it takes 5 years, that's okay. If it takes 10 years, that's okay as well. Maybe after 20 years, other people should actually take my place and go and steer the wheel. What's your question? Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
It's okay. No, but if we don't limit the potential of openDAW, where do you see it going in the future?
First of all, it would be nice to grow a team. Yeah. So where a lot of people can do what they are best in and then moving the project in the whole forward. So that means there is a team or people working on a studio, people working on cloud systems, people working to see what schools and universities and the whole education actually needs, maybe even material to accompany the teaching with openDAW, right? So how to schedule lessons and everything. That would be amazing. So, and when it comes to the studio, which is of course the thing I'm thinking about all the time, is I want to have this modular system up and running at least or at latest by the end of next year. Yeah, so maybe earlier, depending if we get funding and we can hire people, then it's all speeding up the process, of course. The reason is that I see the modular system as something that really makes a difference. So the modular system basically is something, so maybe some people remember Native Instruments Reactor, or when you just think about maybe Blender, the 3D software, how you create shaders. So you basically have a low-level access, which is super visual because you have nodes and you're doing connections and typing some numbers, but there's always things to change these numbers over time. So you can basically create your own effect devices, your own instruments, your own sequences. There is no limit at this point. What I want to avoid with that feature is that people are waiting for more stock, because what we don't want to do is introducing some first-class citizenship where people can buy plugins or new devices. That's completely off the table. Yeah, it should always be accessible for everybody, and that is something I'm aiming for. So you can imagine that there are in such a community, there are very different people, right? So there are people that are very talented in terms of music. Some are more even into programming. Some are into sequencing. And just considering that there are people that are basically doing nothing more than creating instruments and making user interfaces for other people that are not into low-level programming, but they have a very good talent for music itself. So bringing these people together, that should be the ultimate goal. And the modular system is definitely one ingredient that can make that happen. And these things also exist in a way, right? There's DSP and other solutions, but it's always like an alien plugin in unknown host. So the minute openDAW has the modular system, it is baked into it. It's they know each other, so you can provide completely different approaches. Like there could be a sequencer for regions, even for a node, because these things exist in both worlds, and they know each other, and there are APIs that can talk to each other. So this is something where I'm really looking forward to seeing, and that brings endless possibilities to openDAW.
Do you sometimes think about whether or how to incorporate like a safety net when it comes to development for the system. Let's say you want to allow them to do whatever they want, but you also want to allow them to explore in a way that they could be relatively certain their speakers won't blow up, for example, right? So encouraging freedom and creativity while helping navigate the let's call it the sandbox.
You already said the word for it, right? So it's sandboxing is the thing that we are going to do, right? So as at least as long as you are developing a plugin, there should always be like a hard limiter and something that checks for if the numbers are actually still numbers, yeah. Because if there is a division by zero or infinities, and there are so many things that can go wrong. High numbers can really make something on your headphones that are very unpleasant to hear. So I know what you're talking about, and these things have thoughts in our in our proceeding.
I a lot of the time when I'm going with my students over new things they're not familiar with, one of the things that gives people confidence to experiment is they at least know where they're not going. Like they at least know where they are not. So at least you can explore this entire vast world of audio design. You can see where the rail is. So at the very least, you won't find yourself falling off a cliff just, regularly, on the daily. So that's awesome to hear. You've been getting a lot of like calls and attention since openDAW started becoming more public and the project was more familiar. Were you contacted by any other open source projects? People who are connected to teams, let's say maybe MuseScore, because open source projects can more easily interact with one another?
Not yet. I have made connections on LinkedIn, and I got a few emails from people. But I think, they first want to see what they are up against, right? So they want to see the source code. They want to see when we are going to release it. And that's completely understandable. I don't think there are hard feelings. It's just like, cool. Let's see what they come up with, and then we look into it and then see where we can actually collaborate. So one thing I'm looking forward to is actually I'm not even quite sure if there are real open source. The clap,
the format.
Yeah, the format exactly. So like VST and audio unit, there is now for a couple of years now, right? Clap, and they are looking into Wasm, which is WebAssembly. So basically, they want to provide a way to access Clap, being able as a developer, being able to compile to WebAssembly and make it able to allow developers actually to use them.
That's a huge deal.
That would be a huge deal. Yeah. So we are in contact, and I suggested that openDAW could be one of the first platforms actually to work with that. But maybe they already are in talking with others. Yeah. So we don't need to be first, but I want to have a part of the cake. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I think since Clap plugins are performing extremely well, and local DAWs like Reaper are already working with that format and to a very successful degree. I do think if they provide the support for WebAssembly, that can definitely be a horizon opening experience for anybody using a web-based DAW.
Yeah, especially when it comes to web-based DAW, right? So we haven't talked about what we have in mind for those people who are really only working offline, or they want to use it as a native DAW. That's also on the list that we are thinking about, and we're thinking of introducing some kind of a downloadable agent. So you download a very tiny software which would contain the audio engine of openDAW and the ability to launch VST plugins, Clap plugins, audio unit, or what have you, right? And it's obvious that you then always need to start that tiny thing, but that could run in the background and only get activated and get a CPU cycled when it's really needed, right? So there are ways to make that really seamless in your experience.
Yeah, I think some of the struggle with VST, and if I'm not sure with AU plugins as well, is that the implementation of them in your DAW, that is usually a license issue, because you have to license the ability to use the format, which is why, for example, Pro Tools doesn't have direct VST support. But if I'm not mistaken, it's not the same with Clap, which I think will definitely make that format evolve into a very robust system for people to develop plugins on. More and more, independent plugin developers are on the up and up. Let's say that they're able to publish and they're able to develop. And I'm really looking forward to see how that pans out when it comes to openDAW. Different DAWs have different workflows that are inherent to them. So Ableton Live has a more experimental and a playground kind of design, and there's the live session thing. Something like Cubase is more of a sequencer at heart, while Pro Tools is more of a, let's say, tape recorder at its core. Do you have that kind of direction for openDAW? And the add-up question is the ultimate modularity that vision?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. So first of all, there's no better time to start with a new DAW because there are so many DAWs already and you can cherry pick what you like, right? So that might sound a little bit strange to some people, but this is how software development often works. You have the feeling that there are very good solutions, but they are super scattered over different softwares. And you want to just combine them into a new software. And of course, then you have new ideas that you put on top. So it's not just a copycat, so to say. The same goes for openDAW. So there's this idea that what we call a classic view, where we are actually very close to Ableton and Logic Pro, where you have this device panel where actually notes are coming in, and then you have MIDI effects like an arpeggiator, pitching up, down, chances, or what have you, and then you have your instrument that takes that and produces audio, and then it goes further through audio effects, and that's one unit that goes to the mixer with a channel strip, right? So this is very the default approach how DAWs are working. And we want to have this view as a starting point, not necessarily for people that are advancing in openDAW. They will probably go and first thing is switching to a different view where you probably go to a modular system and where you are completely free, right? So you don't have to deal with any of these things, right? So you can just go into one view and then cable your way through the sounds that you like to have and create your own sequencers and so on. When you think about going into educational sectors and they don't want to teach something that is super special, right? That has no interface with any other software, that wouldn't make any sense for them, right? So that is where the classic view actually comes into play and gives everybody a chance to start with standard behavior, and then you can explore a completely new world, or you stay in there. That's fine as well.
It's very interesting because I feel like a very strong sense of exploration is encouraged once you have a standard view and you create a track in it, and then you flip the coin to the other side and you're like, what does it look like under the hood on the visual coding? Let's say that's what the modular system looks like, which I think is a bit more digestible than a Eurorack modular system. So you have those nodes and the connections, and then you go back to standard view and you add an instrument, and then you flip it back and you're like, what does that look like? And it's like, oh, and before you know it, you're familiar with how things are rigged behind the scene.
Exactly. That's actually what we have in mind. That so right now we have a few stock things, right? There is this tape deck to playback samples. There's the vaporizer to have at least something that is a very simple subtractive synthesizer. Then 3 audio devices and 2 MIDI effects. But I envision that when the modular system is coming, that we actually rebuild them again from scratch with the modular system. So everything you see in openDAW, every device should be able to be explored from within, that you can just open it and see, this is how it actually works. And then you can take a synthesizer, and when you have the feeling, I need an LFO at a certain parameter. No problem. You just add it and then collapse it back in there again, and you can make changes to the user interface and call it your own, right? So yeah, this is going to be very exciting. This is what I learned from past experience in the other project, that people always want to have things a little bit differently. They would have made different choices. Yeah? When we say we are going to have an LFO that can control 4 out of 5 parameters, and the fifth we think, nah, that's not really necessary. The minute it's open, it's out there. People are saying, oh, why can't I do that? And to prevent this problem that you have to make decisions for other people, you go and say, do it for yourself. Yeah, we provide fundamental devices to start and to learn from, and we all see what's going to happen, because I don't know.
Yeah, there's always the wild card element of it, in which the people make it their own. I do think that it's a very fine balance to try and walk, because, as we said before, when you have like the edges of the sandbox, and it's capable of being expanded by, let's say, by the community, but the starting point before it becomes open, what you define as standard or as default, like the starting point, how much direction and recommendation is in that starting point, that's also very interesting to kind of fine tune. I guess everybody in your team has their own take and angle about what they think that default is.
It's true. Yeah. Everybody in my team has a nice ring to it, right? I'm actually still the only one who's actually programming. And so, yeah, there's a lot of feedback in Discord, and I'm asking for feedback. And there are definitely a lot of decisions that I'm trying to get people involved. But in the end, all these things like the main views, having a classic view, having a modular system view, these are things that were like from day one in there. But it's still interesting to see when the project evolves. So right now it's a prototype, you open it and then you are on your own. Usually software should guide users into doing something, right? So if you open, for instance, Ableton or Logic Pro, then you immediately get a lot of, actually have a lot of decisions to do, right? So do you want to do a recording? Do you want to play a software synthesizer? And sometimes it's like, I don't know, just let me in. I want to do something. And yeah, so that should also explain how hard these things are, right? So maybe we just leave it like that. You open it, you have the classic view, and you're going to explore for yourself. There will be YouTube videos, there will be tutorials from other people that say, don't even look at the default view. Immediately go there and do this, right? We all know these videos. Don't do that. Yeah. Instead, right? So this is going to happen, I'm pretty sure.
To me, at least, it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you also don't want the users to be overwhelmed with the standard view because it has no direction. So let's say a few things are bound to be at least more appealing to the eye on first entrance to the software, because then you're like, oh, okay, that's where I'll start playing with stuff, at least where I begin, and I'll expand from there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we get some feedback now over the last 3 weeks from people that were not familiar with either the project I did before or the thing that I'm doing now, openDAW, and they were just jumping into cold water and trying to swim. And was actually quite promising to see that they didn't really have a lot of issues, right? So it was tiny things, things that we can correct or make better. So I'm really looking forward to how this evolves. But at the same time, how it looks right now, I'm trying to keep it clean, right? So the more options you put into an interface, the more you have to figure out how to weight them, right? So you have to see, okay, this is really not important, so we put it somewhere else where you see it probably at first site or third site or probably never. So when you answer a question like never, then you should even think, is that actually a feature that we need? There's always a juggle. Yeah, you want to feel people welcome, but you don't want to have a lot of text to read. You don't want to have a lot of options to choose from. There should be immediately a way of thinking, okay, yeah, I probably drag something from here to there. And that's not really even implemented right now in a good way. I know all the pitfalls that people are running into because I'm just documenting them and putting them on a list and waiting for the time to make that better. But at the same time, that's something I want to really stay strong, not to push the user interface to a degree where it looks like every other software, right? So I don't want to tell names or drop names, but there are softwares where I have the feeling actually every software I open, it's always like, Jesus Christ, there's so many things I can adjust and config. And
it's overwhelming to get introduced to it, right?
Exactly. So why is there so many things on the first level of where I approach something, right? Why can I do layout changes that are very creating a completely new thing on the first level of site? So that doesn't make any sense to me, but I see how you can go like that. Yeah, when you have more people in, they are implementing stuff. They are looking for places to put features, to make configurations for the users, checkboxes and radio groups, and then bam, 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 and there you have it, a complicated software that goes faster than you can look at it.
Definitely. I really appreciate the approach that keeps it clean. I think the less you overwhelm the user, the more they'll be curious to twist what they see they can. A way you see that a lot in real life is when anybody who's not studying audio is looking at a recording console. So you look at that mixer and it has so many knobs. Forget the fact that some of them are duplicates of others functionally, but they just see a whole bunch of knobs and they're like, nope, I'm going away. Nope.
Was one of the first tweets I have seen on my older project. So that's like 18 years ago or something. It was, I don't know, someone tweeted a lot of buttons to push. I had a feeling, and that was really, that fit to or matched in that time frame. There weren't much web applications back then. They were used to websites basically and games and not like all these buttons to push and a lot of dials to turn. And yeah,
I think there is a lot of educational value in exploring experiences that are unique. And you said when you were working on audio tool, right? The project itself kind of ran into a crossroad of how it's going to develop, how it was going to continue its evolving, if at all. And you said at first it felt like a failure. Of course, now we know that it's an opportunity that brought up like something that a lot of people are really excited about. But how did you decide to deal with that sense of failure or uncertainty?
Probably like every other human, there are these classic phases like denial, anger, acceptance. And then you look at it and you think, wait a minute, I learned so much over the last 16 years. We still haven't gotten close to what I had in mind for Audio Tool. So what hinders me to start all over again and do it the way I wanted it to do all the time? It took a few months with a lot of hard feelings, a lot of sadness, and trying to understand what actually happened. Yeah, it's like losing a relationship in a sense. Or there's grief, there is everything. So when you are really so connected to a project that you brought to life, then it is something when you get disconnected from one day to another. Well, there was a way to foresee it's going to happen, but still, there's this one day where you see, okay, now it's broken. Now we are disconnected, and now we have to part ways. Yeah, that's hard. There's nothing I can say, but I can only say for those who are in the same situation, disconnect earlier. Yeah, the minute you have the feeling that things are going wrong, of course, try to fix it a few times. But if you, after the 10th times see nothing really changes, and the people who make a lot of promises do not really go into fulfilling their promises, then you need to leave, and it doesn't matter how much you are connected and attached to the project. And that's also the same like a relationship, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, some relationships, and again, it's the same with professional relationships. Both sides can put all the time and energy and their good intentions into something, but when a dissonance begins, you have misalignment, right? And the more you progress, the farther it's going to go. So from a certain point, it makes sense to let go. And learning to let go, I feel, is a very important skill and a very challenging thing to do, but easier said than done.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I'm now better prepared than ever, and sometimes, of course, you would like to go back into time with the knowledge that you have and think, yeah, I would do it completely different this time, right? But that's not how life works. So we have this finite time and try to make the best out of it. And sometimes you learn things very late, but it depends how you look at it, right? So is it really late if you are still able to pull something new out of it and make that a success? I don't know. If openDAW is going to be coming close to what I imagine for it, yeah, I'm a happy guy, definitely.
It can feel to us, because of our perception of time, that something is late, but a lot of times hindsight is 2020. So get to the point in which you've done something and you can look back, because the only way sometimes to pick up the new lessons is to learn from what went and didn't go according to plan, more from what didn't go according to plan, because that's where most of the valuable lessons are. And then look backwards, take that knowledge, and keep moving.
Absolutely. And I went to a lot of conferences, and I was very lucky to see very talented people and eloquent people who were talking about failure years ago, and actually already in a time where I had a not so good feeling about how things are working out. But it's a different thing to hear it from someone and getting an idea what they're talking about, and then seeing the connection to yourself. Because I was still in denial, right? So, and still trying to make it happen, make it work. These things take time. You cannot push that, yeah, and other people cannot push that on you. So it's really hard. I had a lot of friends saying, "Jesus, you have to stop working for that. It's just insane." But at the same time, I couldn't let go. And this is something that comes from the inside at some point, or it's something that both parties are actually going on an escalation, and then it explodes, and then there's no other way to go different parting ways.
Yep. I think there's a very important lesson in it, and I'm really glad to be able to share it with the people at home, because when we encounter these situations, a lot of time we do feel alone in them, because in that very particular case, yeah, no one is by our side experiencing the same thing, but out there, everybody who takes risks, everybody who try to innovate or make something new or experiment, people run into those harsh situations, and being able to transfer that kind of knowledge and that kind of experience between us is very valuable. If people want to support the project, back it up in any way, what are the things that you are currently looking for?
Well, money drives the world. So right now, I'm actually pushing my own money into it, but this has limits. So it would be super nice if I could actually make a living from Patreon, right? So if people are seeing that and having the feeling that's a project to support, and they should definitely go to Patreon or Ko-fi. There are actually 2 accounts I installed for supporting me, and there are different tiers. That's one thing, right? So that would just give me the opportunity to work on that without thinking, can I pay my rent in 3 months, right? And where to get food on the table. And I don't need much money, so I don't drive a car and all these things. So I'm a really easygoing guy. The next thing is for those who are already working in companies or in the educational sector. So we are in need of talking to people, yeah, like yourself. So I always take the opportunities to talk to people. I want to know their needs, their pains. What is it that we can actually do? Yeah, so that's the beauty of it, that I'm trying to do something where I personally would like to do music with, right? And on the other hand, I also see that it doesn't conflict with helping people making better education. So yeah, if anybody is listening to that, watching that, and having a feeling, yeah, I know people from government, EU funding, I'm a teacher, I'm a professor, I'm a musician. All these people, I love to talk, right? So there's not much else there is to do. It's just 2 years and a pen of paper, trying to document everything I hear, having the feeling of networking my way through getting funding at some point, and enough to provide for a team and found a company and all these things that need to come to make this a success. I would be very happy to get introduced to those thoughts.
I should also say, by the way I got in contact with André is he actually has a link, at least as of the time of this video, through which you can schedule a call and ask questions about the things you're curious about and bring input. And I definitely recommend doing that. One, because André is an absolute pleasure of an individual to talk with. But also, I feel like when this kind of transparency and direct contact is being presented, it's good to encourage it, and it's good to make the most of it. You definitely have more of an effect on a project like that, as opposed to projects in which there is zero connection between you and people making the shots. So that's an opportunity I definitely recommend. For testing the system, bringing inputs and stuff like that, are you guys doing like focus groups, or is anybody welcome to hop on the project and provide their input?
We have a Discord server, and it's actually very easy to get an invite for that. You just have to go on openDAW.org, contribute. There are links to Patreon, Ko-fi, and Discord. I think we're approaching 1,000 people, maybe today already or tomorrow. I don't know. Definitely by the end of the week. And that's already giving me a lot of motivation. Yeah, a very good feeling that that people are so engaged in that and giving so many good feedback on it, and looking forward how it progresses and all these things that keeps me up and running. And those people or the Discord server itself, we have moderators that are actually trying to provide the best way how to communicate. So there are channels for bugs, for requests, for all the different subjects that we can discuss about, be it a sequencer, be it a modular system. You can share your music you have made with openDAW, right? But you can also, there's also just a music channel, yeah, just for people talking about music and what have I done last week with a completely different DAW, right? So it's open, don't want to exclude things, like a melting pot of people, yeah, and see that we get the best out of it. Discord is definitely a good way to stay updated on a project.
I really hope people take you up on that offer, because it sounds like a very, very interesting project. Are there plans to allow uploading of video as well to openDAW?
After 20 years of being in that mindset, of course, we have thought about video, right? That would be just amazing to have something like that. It's also interesting for podcasts, yeah, that they can basically underlie it with music at certain points, or commercials, which, well, yeah, different story. I think the browsers, I keep saying that for 20 years. And even though the process is much slower than I anticipated back then, I think all the software is coming eventually to browsers and the internet, because they are getting faster, they are getting more reliable. The differences are getting smaller and smaller. You don't have to write like different code like 20 years ago. It was just a disaster. You had code for Chrome, for Firefox, for Safari, and then all these frameworks and libraries were coming in to help you with that. Nowadays, you can basically write plain code, and yeah, you have to check from time to time and go over different browsers to see if they all are fine with that.
So you're planning to support all major browsers, essentially. It's supposed to be browser agnostic.
Yeah, nowadays modern browsers or latest current browsers would probably count for is Safari and Firefox and Chrome. Well, we all know that Chrome is like the biggest browser right now, but maybe when someone is watching this video in 2 years, everything changed again, right? So Edge is also a Chromium browser, so there's not much happening right now. And I was really pleased to see that some of the APIs, the web APIs I'm using for openDAW are really supported by all these major browsers. Yeah, so usually like Safari was always behind with everything, but they are coming closer and closer, and it's really good to see that even support is actually super niche web APIs like the Origin private file system, which is something openDAW would be a pain to implement if that wasn't available to us. So that's really good. There is, when it comes to video, there are web APIs for encoding and decoding on the fly, which is right now, well, I'm not quite sure, half a year ago, at least the last time I checked, was not supported on Safari. But eventually, all these things are coming into browsers. And the cool thing is, just saying that, openDAW is like, the entire application right now is below 300K. It starts almost immediately because you don't have these bulky frameworks that each software is shipping, because they still don't have a standard or something. So you download a software which does very little. I'm not talking about doors, obviously, other things like utilities, and you're already downloading like a gigabyte of frameworks just to make a few kilobytes of code happening to run on your machine, and that's just crazy. And I think this is potential that browsers offer to us, despite even that it's online and that there's a whole internet that you can link to and refer to and get more data from, right? So I think we have to give the internet and browsers way more credit when it comes to stuff like that.
Absolutely. I also think it is such an important thing, and only software that are more supported on the regular can afford to do that. But the software itself being light is extremely meaningful. It saves an amount of time that's unimaginable when you stack it up of every day of work. I can definitely say I've used different softwares in which you can sense the software's been around for a long time, and to say it very gently, the code engineers who wrote it are probably not alive anymore. And therefore, like, it seems like the people who maintain the software kind of don't know what's happening in the source code, and they're afraid to touch it. So that kind of, let's call it trimming and maintenance of the base of the code and keeping it light, it's a very good thing, in my opinion, to strive for. And web apps definitely encourage you to keep it that way.
Yeah, well, that's the ideal thing that I have in mind too, right? So, but it wasn't happening for the last 20 years, right? So when we had Flash, which was a different beast, and then JavaScript is just nothing that you can really build a big application out of it without any types and any hints what you are dealing with. And but nowadays we have TypeScript, which feels like having a very solid foundation, right? So you can type everything. Your IDE, your coding IDE always knows what's going on and can help you with certain things. Compilation times are just not even noticeable, right? So, and that is completely different when the project, AudioTool project, was in a completely different state of development. We were coming from Flash to JavaScript, so, and then we had a cross compiler, so we wrote Java, and we had a compilation time in the end from, I don't know, 3.5 minutes. So try to implement a very tiny feature with these compile times. So you're basically wasting all the time of the day just waiting for for the compiler to be there, and nobody is to blame. That was just how it works. We were lucky that we had the technology and this cross compiler, because that was the only way to write such a huge application. That's something I really see going forward in a good way with these new technologies that are coming, and they also look like they are there to stay. Yeah, even JavaScript gets better and better. When you look at it today, it feels very modern, completely different to what I have started with. It's fun to work with that, and it's fun to develop again. It's the best time to start bigger projects, actually.
The longer the lifespan of the software has been, that's why I had that, not with us code engineers theory in my head, because I'm like, the longer the software exists, the more dead code is in it that you're so terrified of taking out, because the entire tower of cards is collapsing.
That's true. Yeah, that's where you need very specialized people in teams, because there are people out there they know exactly how to refactor code. That's something that's really, really hard. I know that for myself, I refactored a lot of things, even bigger parts of the application, like an Audi tool. It's always a pain. You always forget something, but there are certain ways you can do it in a very seamless manner without changing everything at the same time. Yeah, so you're moving and you're trying to keep something that is compilable and testable. Developers always would like to start from scratch, but they often forget that it doesn't take too much time to be in the same position where they started, having the feeling of, I would like to start from scratch again, right? So so we all have to learn. To one of the things I would like to share as a probably medium developer is don't even get attached to your code, right? So this code looks probably nice in the evening. I know that 10 years ago, I was sometimes looking at my code and I was like, oh, Jesus, that's so beautiful. And it's running so perfectly. Yeah, because it was just laboratory conditions, right? It was just doing one particular thing very, very good. The next day, new feature requests, and this code needs to be destroyed, right? So always keep it alive, which basically means it can be ugly. It can stay ugly for some time. Yeah, that doesn't matter. It just needs to be in a place where I can immediately grab it, turn it around, and remove it, replace it, or do anything with it.
Absolutely. I agree. I hope more developers take that into account, because I feel like the public is definitely developing a sense for feeling that delay and getting frustrated by it. Like the people are noticing. Once upon a time, it only used to be with printers, for example, that the protocol that you would use to send information to printers, that would be the only prima donna portion of your system, because everything happens immediately. But once you send something to the printer, then, oh no, I need to think about it. I need to consider it before to send it to me. I'll go over that thing. I feel a lot of people are really developing a sense for what's tactile, what's quick, and what's efficient. Andre, thank you so much for giving the time and the knowledge. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Daniel, for having me. And it's really a pleasure to talk to people. And that was a really deep conversation. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
I enjoyed it as well. It's really, really fun to just, dive into things and let passion lead the way. Guys at home, don't forget, hydrate, stretch, take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one.
Ciao, ciao.